Thank you for watching this final episode of Through My Eyes, a survivor's journey through domestic abuse, brought to you by the Needham's Domestic Violence Action Committee. I am Roxanne Taylor, host of this series and a past member of Needham's Domestic Violence Action Committee. Joining us today is Emily Turnbull. Emily works for Riverside Mobile Crisis, but is embedded in the Needham Police Department as the law enforcement clinical support. We have returning from our third episode, Officer Denneno, the community outreach officer at the Needham Police Department and a member of Needham's DVAC, and Brittney, who is here to continue sharing her journey as a domestic violence survivor. Brittney is currently working at REACH through their Survivor Speakers Bureau. Thank you all for participating in today's episode to talk about domestic violence support services. Emily, can you tell us about your role in the Needham community?
Yep, so my role, I started about 3 years ago. It is working as originally called a jail diversion program, but now it's the law enforcement clinical support. Basically, it was shared with Dedham. They had a contract shared with Dedham through Riverside. And from July 1st, 2023, it became full-time in Needham, so I got the full-time role there. Essentially, my role is to work with the officers, especially Officer Denneno, with any crisis that occurs in Needham, so whether it's mental health, substance use, domestic violence, cognitive decline. We'll work through the crisis in the moment, but we'll also offer follow-up services too. So especially with domestic violence, we might meet somebody multiple times after an incident to make sure that they have the right support.
And Officer Denneno, can you remind us of your role in the Needham Police Department?
Yep, so I am the community outreach officer, which means that I work on all of our domestic violence, substance use, and mental health cases. I do that in conjunction with Emily, and like Emily said, we do a lot of follow-ups, and we just connect people with the resources that they need after, what could be a terrible day for them.
Okay. And Brittney, can you tell us why these resources are so important?
They're really important because during my time trying to get out of my domestic violence relationship, I felt really isolated, and I just felt everywhere I just didn't know where to turn, honestly. So the first place I did go was the police station, which was in a different state than Massachusetts, but they provided me with an order of protection, so that was the first step. But they're really, these resources are really important.
And how did you get in contact with REACH?
Through a mentor that I have. She had told me to reach out to them, but other than that, I didn't know anything about domestic violence or the support that was offered, so I ended up calling them, which was great.
So Brittney, can you tell us why these resources are so important?
Yeah, the isolation was one of the hardest parts. Even when I tried to reach out to friends or family, there was this invisible wall, one that was built from misunderstanding, discomfort, and their inability to really grasp what I was going through. Some of my friends and family wanted to help, but just didn't know how. And some of them just didn't want to see the truth and what was really going on. It made me feel even more alone. I was just trapped in this cycle of fear. The fear of being caught, what might happen if I left, and how this would all affect my son. Every decision felt like risk and safety, which was never guaranteed, when the resources came in, it played a huge part in saving my son and I. REACH really stepped up when I had nowhere else to turn. I remember calling them and I remember after talking to Pam, thinking, I didn't even know how to explain what I was experiencing and what I was going through, but she was just so reassuring and telling me that, this happens, it's okay, you're in a safe place, calm down, because I had just it was like I had experienced so many traumatic events in such a short amount of time that I don't even think I mean, even now I'm still trying to process them. But at that moment, it just felt like I was in this whirlwind. And REACH really helped me and guided me through the court proceedings, the healing process, my support group. All of those things together have led me to where I am now. And I feel more confident in myself.
Brittney, I'm so sorry that you felt this way. Can you tell me more about how you got in touch with REACH?
Sure. I first learned about REACH through a mentor I have in my life. At the time, I was overwhelmed navigating the legal processes, trying to protect myself and my son, and feeling lost in a world that didn't always make room for survivors like me. REACH became more than just a resource. It was a lifeline. They provided guidance, advocacy, and emotional support when I needed it most. Through their help, I found counseling, legal assistance, and most importantly, a community that understood. Even their support continues reminding me that healed doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen, and I'm not alone in it.
Resources, aside from REACH, include a victim witness advocate, and that is a part of the district attorney's office and works in the courthouses, and they can provide referrals to REACH as well as other domestic violence organizations throughout the state. A safe pen advocate, which is also throughout the state courthouses, and there is currently one located inside of the Brockton District Courthouse. An additional resource is the MOVA, or the Massachusetts Office for Victim Assistance, and it is a free resource that can also help survivors with filing restraining orders in Massachusetts courts. Officer Denneno and Emily, can you share additional resources that you are familiar with?
Yep, so when we do a domestic violence follow-up, I try to give people resources that work for them. So because of our catchment area, that can be REACH. If people speak a different language, or there's a resource center that works better with their culture, I'll refer them to that, such as the Asian Task Force, or MAPS, which is they cater to Portuguese-speaking individuals. So I'll give them those. You mentioned MOVA. They have a great list by county online, but we will give people our business cards and then just some info about restraining orders. Sometimes people aren't ready to take that step, but we give them all the info that we can so that when they are, they know what to do.
So Safelink is a Massachusetts statewide 24/7 toll-free domestic violence hotline. It's a resource for anyone who's been affected by domestic violence or dating violence. The number is 877-785-2020. Advocates are bilingual in English and Spanish and have access to a service that can provide translation in more than 130 languages. They also help provide real-time shelter information to see what's available in the area. Finally, we have Jane Doe Inc., which assists in finding help in your local area. The JDI, Massachusetts Coalition Against Sexual Assault and Domestic Violence.
Officer Denneno and Emily, can you guys explain what happens when the Needham police are called in?
Yeah, so typically it's a call for service with patrol. So they'll respond if an instance of domestic violence happens when we're here, we'll respond to it. But typically it's patrol taking the report. They'll forward it to both Emily and I, and we'll review it as a team and do the follow-up as a team. Obviously, with domestic violence incidents being so dangerous for police officers, we may not necessarily go right out to the house. We may do a phone follow-up. It's sometimes a little bit safer, and sort of gauge what's going on and how we can help people. We've gone to court with people before.
Yes, so one of the benefits of having us working as a team, as a clinician and an officer, is that we can go to court, so we can help if someone's a little bit nervous about the process of court. We can help support them with the restraining orders alongside the victim witness advocates at the court, and just be there as part of a support network, which they might not have at that point.
Brittney, can you share with us your perspective of walking into court?
Sure. The very first time I went to court in Massachusetts, there was actually a search warrant that was executed on my house, and I was escorted by 3 state police officers to court, and I had my 18-month-old son with me, so they took both of us. They had come to my house around 7:30 in the morning, and it was very chaotic. Obviously, I didn't know what was going on because I wasn't aware prior to the habeas corpus. And then they basically said, get dressed like you're going to court. We have to be out of this house in 10 minutes. But I was still in shock, and I obviously was starting to panic because I had no idea why I was going to court, what the reasoning was. And they were very limited in the information that they were giving me. They were telling me, we have this signed order by the judge, and that's it. And our job right now is to get you and your son to that courthouse safely before 9 a.m. And obviously, when that started sinking in, I just, it was about a 40-minute drive from my house. So that really, the entire time, I was just trying to call my family, call anyone to help. And lucky enough, Pam, who's part of REACH, she was my advocate at the time, she had answered and said, I'm going to meet you there. And she ended up meeting me there, which made me feel a lot better, that at least and then my family eventually came as well, but just to have that familiar face, because at the time it was a bunch of police officers in a courthouse and just me and my baby, and I just felt so alone and isolated, and I wasn't prepared for what was going to happen. So we ended up going into court that day, and I didn't have an attorney at the time, so the judge allowed a recess and gave me 2 hours to find an attorney. So I went back to the room, and obviously the police officers were to stay with me at the entire process. And I was able to find an attorney to come within the hour. So I ended up leaving court that day with another court date. So it ended up being continued, just because I wasn't, obviously the judge assessed the situation and she realized that the roles were reversed, that I actually wasn't the perpetrator in it. I was actually the victim, and she ended up pushing it out. But I think that if I had had a model like the Needham Police Department, I think I would have been a lot calmer on my end, because I felt like it literally went from 0 to 100, and I just went straight panic. Because when you're in that situation for the last 2 years, I've been escaping this, and I finally escaped, and then all of a sudden, it was 8 months later, I had a knock on my door, and I had no idea why. I honestly thought they were going to tell me that he had passed away. I didn't think that I was going to be brought into court that day, but I think if I had the model that the Needham Police Department is executing, it would have gone a lot differently, because I think they would have been able to reassure me, calm me down, explain to me what was happening, why they were there. Because I remember asking these questions, and none of the police officers were answering me. They just kept saying, you need to go get dressed and we need to go. And if you take medication, if you need anything for your baby, grab it now, get a bag, and we're going. It just felt like everything was moving so quickly, and nobody took the time to even assess if I was okay. And then meanwhile, I'm trying to get an 18-month-old ready for court 2 at 7:30 in the morning, and the whole thing seemed chaotic, and I think that it just would have gone a lot differently if there were better protocols and procedures in place.
Yeah, so I think fortunately Brittney was able to have Pam with her, because that's the ideal situation, is we want survivors to link up with these advocacy resources and have an advocate with them. The way that Emily and I support them are typically, it's the first restraining order, and they aren't really set up with these resources yet because everything does happen fast in these cases. So we will go be the person in that survivor's corner, and then make sure that they're getting linked up with resources and hopefully get an advocate in the future. I think it's important because different levels of advocacy have different levels of confidentiality. So a clinician is going to have different confidentiality than a police officer, because the way that the laws are in Massachusetts, if probable cause is established that a crime has occurred in a domestic violence case, then we need to act on it. We don't have discretion in that case. So it's important for people to know that sort of who they're talking to. But that's sort of what we do.
Yeah, I think the important message here is really to utilize those services. So yes, obviously in an ideal world, people would be accountable for their actions and it would go through the court process and the police. But sometimes people aren't ready for that, and we understand that. So to utilize those services out there, whether it's REACH, Needham has a really good health department who it kind of runs the DVAC service, so they have a duty of care to you as well. And I think it's just important to speak to someone, whether it's us, whether it's another service, whether it's friends, family, whoever it is you feel most comfortable with, because ultimately that's how you get that support, and we want to be there to help you in any way we can.
I want to thank our panel for joining us today to share information about how to find support and resources. The Needham's Domestic Violence Action Committee would like to thank viewers for watching this series, Through My Eyes, A Survivor's Journey Through Domestic Abuse.